right, TV. It's been a whirlwind, man. Are you caught up? Did you catch your breath?
Yeah, a little bit. It's been interesting for sure. I mean, the one that's been like not surprising, but the one that's been just in terms of timing was Noyle, just because like even last week it was leaning Mississippi State, and he was leaning to make the decision July 7th. Nebraska obviously has a conversation with him, gets him to pull up that timeline and also make that decision in Nebraska's favor. But outside of that, I mean, yeah, like most all of this, like Miles, I mean, we put it up in our story yesterday. Miles pretty much was done after his Nebraska OV. He called us. He said, "I saw what I needed to see, and that was that. Confirmed what I needed to confirm, and he was good. Like that. Nebraska got that one done basically a couple of weeks ago. But I will also say this: that one got interesting after the weekend. He was at OT7 finals over the weekend and had 15 touchdowns. He had a couple of schools calling him, being like, "Hey, can we get into this thing late?" And no, he was done with the
Just
process.
15 of them, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I know. So, yeah, he had that performance, and yeah, he had a couple schools calling him, trying to get him to delay a decision, or potentially give their school a second shot, or another chance. And now he was pretty done with it. This is another one. I mean, just relationships over the course of a month, essentially. Nebraska built a really strong relationship there, especially for a guy like him who had some early like interest from Florida and Miami, has teammates going to Florida and Miami, and both those schools kind of played like touch and go with them a little bit. For Nebraska to kind of come in and be all in on him from the moment they offered really meant a lot to him. Really meant a lot to him and his family. I think he's about as shut down as you can get, and I think Nebraska's got a really good shot of holding on to him, because not just all of that's all of what I mentioned. Cortez Mills and Ja'Cory Barney kind of took this guy under their wing. I've known this guy for a while, and are really just kind of pushing the Flobraska thing on him. So I feel good about Nebraska there. Odom's one where we'll just have to see. I do expect that one to continue into the fall. More on that in tomorrow's Timbits, but yeah, it's gonna be. Still waiting on two more this week, or at least two decisions this week. You got Devin Jackson deciding tomorrow, Darian Jones on Friday. And yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's kind of on Matt Rhule to kind of close again there.
Yeah.
Mm.
Coffee is definitely for closers and Coach Rule. He's he's pretty good at that closing thing.
Yeah,
Pretty-
it's impressive.
Tim, give me I know you like doing the evals here. When you see Larry Miles, and we can move on to, because I think there's some really other really interesting recruitment stories here as well. Give me a comp that you think for Larry Miles as you kind of see his game.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, one that just like really stuck out watching him, is just like it is just kind of like the guy that the staff Jakeelan Dana have had some success with. It's Tank Dell-ish, it's Ja'Cory Barney-ish, a guy that can win from the slot and outside. A long strider for a smaller frame, right around 6 foot, but you like the
he
way he
gives
kind
me
of.
Percy Harvin vibes.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, yeah, really shifty. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, he doesn't run through contact. He kind of runs around it, but he doesn't really lose that top end gear at all.
And
Um,
he's not really
He's
he's
not
not
like a
a shake
juker.
you up kind of
Yeah.
guy like a Tyreek Hill, but he's very
yeah,
smooth and it can play the angles like Percy, like kind of sleek and bendy. I like his style in the open field. Hard to believe there are seven guys ranked ahead of him in the slot in that state, but I mean, I guess
yeah, yeah.
it's
I know. Yeah, he's one that I think especially as evaluators got that exposure to him over this past weekend, as he steps into a bigger role as a senior. Again, and keep this in mind, as a junior, he had 1,200 receiving yards playing opposite a borderline five-star receiver that went off to Florida, and Vernell Brown III, who's a freshman there, who also had 1,500 receiving yards. Like it wasn't, yeah, putting up numbers.
they love him in Gainesville, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Playing with a talent.
So, Tim, let's move on to one of the other big commits this week with Claude Impuma. That one, it seems like maybe surprised a lot of people with how it moved to Nebraska late. What do you know about how that all sort of happened?
Yeah. So Florida kind of not took themselves out of it, but Florida was kind of in this first come first serve. And even if you talk to people down there, they don't necessarily love, like, depending on who you talk to down there, they don't love the order operations and things happen. Because if Claude was deciding earlier, they would have loved Claude over maybe one or two of the actual O line commits they got. But they kind of filled up at O line. They weren't willing to really cut a guy in favor of Claude, and so they kind of just took first come first serve. And so it came down to Nebraska and Auburn. Michigan, Ohio State, of course, involved as well. Were hats at the table, but neither one of the schools got him on official visits, and so it really came down to Nebraska, Auburn. I mean, there was some confidence on Auburn's end even going into late last week. They thought they were going to be able to come out on top. They had a more compelling NIL offer, and I think I reported here. Maybe it was just on our board or in the story. Auburn tried to get this done in like December, practically sight unseen. Like Auburn tried to just come in with a pretty sizable bag back in December and just get this done. And so yeah, I mean Nebraska obviously put together a pretty compelling offer, but this was another one where relationships, and I said it on Twitter, have to say it here too. Credit to EJ Bartel, he was the one that got Nebraska into this recruitment way back in October. Was part of the reason Nebraska was able to close with him. Donovan Raiola, of course, played a big role here. The offensive line group led by Tyler Canuck, who's turned into kind of a heck of a recruiter in his own right. Played their part. Rhule, of course, ultimately came down to relationships. Ultimately came down to proximity to home a little bit, and again, kind of a trust in Donovan Raiola's development. We've seen, previous cycles, elite type tackles talk about Raiola's development and talk about, oh, we just need to see more of it. I think you have to kind of credit Claude a little bit too for kind of doing it. Trusting him, even though the proof is still kind of working itself out. You know what I mean? I think we're going to see the results here in the next few years of Raiola's development, but you haven't really seen it yet. And for Claude to kind of trust that, knowing that he needs a lot of development to get to where he wants to go, I think is a credit to the kid and his belief in the staff.
It's interesting too because you mentioned Auburn and Hugh Freeze, and Hugh Freeze has had a lot to say in the recruiting world and is not afraid to put his opinions out there. And Nebraska fans must remember, like a thief in the night, got a big-time wide receiver that Nebraska thought that they had their hooks in from back when he was at Ole Miss. They were the first to offer Chris Hickman, you remember, out of Omaha. But anyway, I say all that to say, winning kind of those head-to-head battles against guys like Hugh Freeze, who apparently pretty much hate Nebraska. I think it's good. Like, Nebraska hasn't won a lot of those, especially at a premier spot like tackle.
Yeah.
And I know I've said this about Donnie. I'm glad you talked about EJ a little bit too, because it's always better when running backs coaches and O-line coaches are on the same page, because it's easy to not on a staff. Trust me, right? Because you'd think it would be real symbiotic, but historically it's not always that way. I love Nebraska's cross recruiting and using all hands on deck. It's very intentional from Coach Rhule, and he likes it that way. So you just can't get too connected to a particular individual. He's really intentional with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's everywhere. I mean, it's specifically the hotbeds in Chicago. It's if you're recruiting Chicago, EJ Bartel's going to be talking to you, and you've also got, your position coach there in Texas, in Oklahoma, in Kansas City, and Missouri in general. You're talking to Jamar Mosey, you're talking to Bartel, you're talking to Keith Williams. Like, you're talking to a couple of guys. But yeah, like Mosey, in Texas is starting to do some work a little bit. Nebraska, kind of working themselves back into, or working themselves in that recruitment of Calvin Thomas, where I'm very curious to see how these next couple of days progress before a July 12th decision. But that's one, again, where you've got, again, our area recruiter kind of playing the long game and doing his part to kind of help Nebraska over the top.
So you mentioned Calvin Thomas. He's one of a few decisions coming up. Devin Jackson, Darian Jones as well. How do you think Nebraska fares in those? I know, I know some people still holding out hope for like a Valdensone as well. And like, how do you see these next few impending announcements going for Nebraska?
Yeah, so Jackson's tomorrow. That one, just feeling Oregon. After talking to a couple people yesterday, he was at Larry Miles's decision. The people around him still kind of lean Oregon. We'll have to see if Nebraska can close over the next day or so. But this is another one. If Nebraska comes out on top, it's relationships beating out NIL. And with Darian Jones, again, still kind of there's more Iowa buzz than there is Nebraska buzz. Again, would kind of take a strong closing effort from Nebraska. I do like where Nebraska's kind of standing at this point with Calvin Thomas. We'll see if that holds. I do think SMU is going to try and make a push. Texas is obviously going to try and make a push. I don't really know where North Carolina stands in this recruitment anymore. They were at one point a school with some buzz here, have kind of dropped off a little bit, and I have not heard a whole lot linking Thomas and North Carolina as of late. But do they renew their effort at least in these final days? I'm curious to see what happens in that one. But and Sohn, yeah, this is just going to be another one where, kind of like in Puma, does Nebraska kind of benefit from some other programs filling up and just the fact that they've built the best relationship? I mean, you have to put those two things together. Like with Sohn, Georgia right now, I think, has 6 D-line commits. That's not to say they wouldn't take Valdensone. Last I talked, it sounds like he's still a take there, and they still very much would want him.
Well, you think
But
you think even with Georgia, Sohn is the type of guy that if he says yes, you take him.
yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter where
Somebody
you
get
are,
moved,
even Florida. Yeah.
you take Sohn.
Exactly. And so I'm curious to see if that continues to hold true with Oregon, with Georgia and Florida, because Florida has a few D-line commits as well. And Nebraska continues to have the best relationship, have continued to be the school that has done things the right way in this recruitment. I don't know if that's going to be enough to put to get over the draw of the SEC. But if it is, then again, like, it would be a massive win for the staff, and I think probably the biggest win of the summer, even after coming out of a summer that's had a lot of big wins.
So it's interesting, we saw the the tweet from Coach Rhule, and he's he's more out in front a little bit. The much ado about nothing. I still don't get it, and I don't want to relitigate it because I've kind of moved on past the bull in the weight room, and people thought that was a big deal, and I'm like, listen, man, it doesn't move my needle. Like, if that's apparently it works, right? So I'm for that. Having said all that, what do you think, or what do you envision year 3 Coach Rhule looks like? It's got to be different, right? Where he seems to be evolving into. He apparently likes this team because he's been a little different. He talks about the kids in the program defending year 3 in terms of the culture. He seems like it's going to start with him in defending year 3 in the culture. Like, he's going to take the lead on that and put his money where his mouth is.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm assuming you've noticed it as well. Yeah, there's not a personality shift, but it is kind of just like, it's a personality that kind of matches where the program's at right now and the culture. I think it is really just, you're seeing two sides fully gel and become one with each other. The players and the staff and all of that come together. And I think this is all just, he's the tip of the sword, I guess, is the best way to kind of put it. He's the guy out in front. And I think the team is going to go as he goes, as Dylan goes. Like, they're the leaders right now. You know what I mean? They're the guys at the very tip of this sword right now. And I think
He goes to bat publicly for this program.
right, exactly. And I think part of this, in my opinion, is just having the trust on both sides of the ball. In Dana Holgerson has control of the offense. Phil Snow and John Butler have control of the defense. He is fully the CEO that he wants to be, leading this program, and it allows him to be a little more vocal because he has a ton of confidence in the guys running the show on both sides of the ball.
Tim, I've kind of gotten the sense, we see different guys, whether it's like Dabo in the last few years or Kirby Smart kind of this year, talking about how none of his guys have been there for a couple springs in a row. It almost seems like, and DB and I were talking about this earlier in the week, it almost seems like Rhule sort of enjoys the chaos that's going on right now. Like it almost feels
he
like
looks like it as an advantage him because he can
yeah,
drive.
it seems like he views it as an opportunity. If everybody else is having a hard time finding their footing, that means there's an opportunity for him in Nebraska to make some hay. Like, have you noticed that part of it as we see, like, we don't hear Coach Rhule sort of like bemoaning the state of college football very much. Every once in a while, he'll be like, yeah, I mean, people are calling my guys a lot. But outside of that, he doesn't really talk about like, well, we don't know this and we don't know this. He's just like, oh, we'll figure it out when they decide, they decide. Like, it almost seems like he enjoys it.
It's like what we touched on last week a little bit. You in this day and age, again, for whatever reason, I get it. I understand. Like, I get it. If you're a casual fan and you see where the state of college football is going, you can kind of dismiss, well, it's all up to money. Why does anything matter? Like, why does anything matter? The way you beat money is by having very strong relationships, having guys that want to be there. Nebraska's been not necessarily ahead of the curve, but they've been prepared for all of these changes. There have been programs out there that have operated, even up to this last week, have operated like this rev share thing is not happening. Like they're not going to have to eventually, kind of have to work within the salary cap and be smart with their money and be smart with certain things. And Nebraska kind of just always operated like this, and so they can kind of approach recruitments, approach the current state with the confidence that they are going to stay consistent and they are working to the plan. When you know that everything's taken care of behind the scenes, when you know that you have a GM that is aligned with you, when you have a program that from the top down is pretty aligned in their values and pretty aligned from a culture standpoint, you can kind of you can move with the confidence that the staff is moving with, and kind of do the things that they're doing right now, because again, they are very confident in the operation that they're running.
Yeah, I am a huge. I don't know how long I've been paying attention to this. So, more than 20 years for sure. And listen. I would hear that individually at each position, you may have had a better guy, right? When you talk athletic director or head coach, or in this case, a general manager or the administrative team. Like individually throughout the last 25 years, you may have had a better singular entity. But when I look at the totality of everybody moving in the same direction, kind of same heartbeat, same philosophy, the non-complaining, the continuity of thought, this may be the best I've seen in the last 25 years, where I feel like it's aligned and it's equipped with forward-thinking go-getters, not woe is me's or what don't we have or we can't do this. Like the belief in the entity from the triumvirate, for me, seems to be at an all-time high.
Yeah, absolutely. And
arguably the most difficult stretch of college athletics.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's
even
I think
conferences, changing head coaches. This is the most difficult time, in my opinion, to navigate.
and they don't really get caught off guard by things when we see rules practically change on a whim every couple months, and it's this, it's that. It's like, at least publicly, even talking behind the scenes, like it's like, well, we trust what we've done. We have strong relationships. We just kind of hope those went out, and you kind of continue to do business as usual. When you like I said, when you know that everyone's aligned, and when you know that your culture, when Rhule talks about defending your three, about a player-led culture. When all those things are true, when recruits are coming on campus and noticing that as well, when all of those things are coming together and work to itself. I talked to a 27 recruit yesterday. I'll have that story up later today. Talked to a 27 recruit today, and 27 recruits don't get the same exposure to the guys as official visitors. When we talk to official visitors, they always talk about, oh, it was really cool to see like how aligned the team is and get to know the players a little bit and realize, all these guys are super tight knit. You hear that all the time from official visitors because they spend, 48 hours plus around the team. You don't really get that with 27 recruits, because typically they come in for a day or two, and they're not really around the facility to the same extent that official visitors are. But I had 27 recruits yesterday, like just saying, yeah, the family culture there. Like you just kind of see it, like they're in the facility and they're, it's like, oh, it's a group of 4 players really walking around, all from different positions.
They protect one another. They're
Yep.
very, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's impressive, man. I try not to get too, gaga gooey, but I just like the fact that they protect the house and they're doing it from the top down.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really cool for me when we were at Indianapolis last week for the 5-Star Challenge. And I was talking to Trey just about the month he had at Nebraska, spending a lot of time around campus. The last two camps we were at, um, his mom took a picture of it too, but there was a point in the camp where it's all the campers and then it's all the players and then it's Trey with the players, and it just felt like watching him operate around camp. It's like, wait, why is he having like a 15-minute conversation with, a third-year walk-on? Why is he like he's so close with everybody on the team? I asked him, I was like, who are your best relationships now? And he's like, man, it's weird. Me and Jeremiah Charles are really close. I don't know what I have anything in common with Jeremiah, but we're really
Listen,
like
is that not funny, JJ?
Yeah.
So you know what's funny about I'm a huge JJ guy. I don't know what it is. He's like Buford. He's like older Buford on steroids because Buford's like that too. Is kind of this grand ambassador, but JJ's kind of been through it too, and he's young, and there's a lot of expectations, and he's still a cool kid. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Lesser a person would have probably wilted a little bit, but I'm glad because But I will tell you this: Trey scared me last week when he said, and Puma wasn't feeling the love like he was from some other school. This dude literally
Yeah,
just,
it was a brief
put
time.
out a bat signal. All the arms. And lo and behold, man, it's interesting to have it watch unfold. Other people are now starting to believe as much as Nebraska does internally, and that's always going to be a scary thing.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with JJ and just the DB room in general, it is kind of cool to see how close that room is, considering how competitive that room is. Like all those guys are fighting for playing time, and it's like, oh, it's cool. Like Jeremiah Charles, there's a chance, like he's probably going to play, but there's a chance he just loses out on like serious snaps
Yeah,
in
I mean,
fall
you
camp,
got
and
Marshall,
it's
you got Khan, you've got who do I like to play? Amari Sanders. You got hey, listen, they got a lot of
yeah.
guys. They
Harvard,
got
yeah, you got a lot of dudes, and that's the thing. Like, it's really cool to see how tight knit that room is. Like, you saw it during camp, in between reps, these guys are drilling together and just working on little things together. It's like you guys should hate each other. Like, there should be some like animosity there. It isn't really that at all.
Tim, last thing for me here before we get you out. We've talked a lot about how it's going to be a small class, small class, small class. But if some of these start to go Nebraska's way, we could creep up to that 15, 16, 17 pretty easy. Like, is that something you think Nebraska's prepared for, where if, hey, all these go their way, they'll take the 16?
I always thought 14 was the max, but it might not be.
Yeah, I mean, just because I think there's a few guys out there that they're going to not make exceptions for, but they're going to hold a spot for and find a way to make it work. We've seen them find ways to make things work in previous years. I think there are a couple guys they'd like to make it work this year, and even coming out of the summer, I think there's a few they're going to keep an eye on. But yeah, like I think this next week and a half, seeing how some decisions go, is really going to shape how they approach August and beyond because I mean you're already starting to see guys start to figure out, okay, I want to get back out to some schools in the fall. I want to potentially continue my recruitment out into the fall. And so Nebraska is weighing all those things. I think again the big one I think is DB right now. You really look and see how they close with Devin and Darian. If those two don't go their way, do they expand the board? Do they just kind of go all in on like a Tadarius Hughes? I'm curious to see how they move forward.
Yeah, you know what? I just get the sense they're not going to panic. I think they like their room.
Yeah, I agree. And they're young. I mean, they're super young there. Like that's why it always felt interesting. Like when the reason they made Danny Odom specifically such a key priority is that's a kind of cover corner type that they're about to lose in the Sierra right after this year. They need that that kind of guy to come in that is just a pure cover guy, can track the number one guy, and Danny is that true like kind of dominant cornerback one that you kind of go all in for, which Nebraska kind of did.
That's our guy, Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Tim, appreciate the time. As always, enjoy the holiday weekend.
Yes, sir. Y'all too. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Stevie. Again, you know, I've liked individual pieces. Like I was a huge Bill Byrne guy, right? Obviously, Coach Osborne, fantastic coach. You've had great athletic department staffs that were kind of singularly led. When you talk about in its totality, you may have had greater individual pieces, but collectively watching Damon and Rhule and Dr. Ilza and you've got a new general manager and Pat, like the movement of navigating this is about as same pagey as I've seen. I don't know how it like lends itself to wins and losses, but thinking collectively, I haven't seen it. Because famously, as great as Bill Byrne was and Coach Osborne individually,
Got butt heads
collectively wasn't always copacetic, right?
Yeah.
So I am defending the brand and loving the brand is huge.